Snow fell in slow, heavy flakes over Rockford, Maine, blanketing the small harbor town in white silence. Emma Hayes pulled the hood of her worn parka tighter around her face as she stepped off the midnight bus. The salty bite of the Atlantic mixed with the sharp sting of winter air, and for a moment she simply stood there, letting the cold seep into her bones. It was the first time she had been back in nearly a decade. She carried only a single duffel bag and the weight of something she couldn't share with anyone I it. Her hand instinctively moved to her swollen belly, 7 months along. The baby shifted inside her, a faint, reassuring movement. The station was nearly deserted, just a few fishermen in thick coats, heading toward the docks. Emma started down Main Street, the snow muffling her footsteps. The storefronts were shuttered, their neon signs dark. She passed the old diner, now closed, and the hardware store that hadn't changed since she was a teenager. Halfway down the street, she noticed a familiar figure leaning against a patrol SUV parked beneath a flickering street lamp. Caleb Morgan. The last time she had seen him, he was 19, all restless energy and a stubborn jawline. Now he wore the badge of Rockford's deputy sheriff and a heavier, more guarded expression. "Emma Hayes," he said, his voice somewhere between surprise and suspicion. "Didn't think I'd see you back here?" "I wasn't planning to stay," she replied. His gaze shifted to her belly, then back to her eyes. "You're in trouble." She didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Caleb nodded toward the SUV. "You'd better come in. It's too cold to stand out here." She hesitated but followed him into the warmth of the vehicle. They drove in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of the heater and a crunch of snow under the tires. Caleb finally spoke. "Is this about them?" Emma's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. "Helix Dynamics," she said quietly. Caleb's jaw tightened. "I heard rumors. Something about your mom before she disappeared." Emma stared out at the snow-draped trees. "It's not rumors. And it's not just about her anymore." He didn't press further, but his eyes flicked toward her belly again. "Where are you staying?" "My mother's house." Caleb shot her a glance. "That place has been locked up for years. I still have the key." They stopped in front of the weathered two-story on the edge of town. The shutters rattled in the wind, and the porch sagged under the weight of snow. As Emma stepped out, she could feel Caleb watching her. "If you need anything," he began. "I'll be fine," she said, forcing a small smile. "Thank you." Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and sea air. She flicked on the light in the living room, and a single bulb cast a dim glow over old furniture draped in sheets. She set her bag down and wandered into the kitchen. On the counter sat a small wooden box she didn't remember seeing before. She opened it to find a necklace silver chain, with a small pendant the size of a dime. The moment her fingers brushed it, something strange happened. A voice, soft, close, inside her head. "Mom." Emma froze. The voice was high and small, like a child's, but it was clear and impossible to ignore. Her breath caught. "Who?" "It's me," the voice said, almost shyly. "Don't be afraid." Emma's knees weakened, and she gripped the counter for balance. She'd been hearing faint murmurs for weeks, chalking them up to stress or dreams. But this was different. It was real. "You're my baby," she whispered. "Yes," the voice said. "And they're coming. You can't stay here." Emma's pulse quickened. "Who's coming?" Before the voice could answer, a knock sounded at the front door, 3 sharp raps. She moved quietly to the living room window and peeked through the curtains. 2 men stood on the porch, both wearing dark coats, their breath steaming in the cold. Even from a distance, she recognized the emblem on their shoulders, Helix Dynamics Security Division. Her heart pounded. She backed away from the window, scanning the room for an escape. The back door was locked from the inside, the kitchen window stuck when she tried to open it. Upstairs, the voice in her head urged. "Now." Emma grabbed her duffel and bolted up the staircase, her footsteps muffled by the carpet. She slipped into her old bedroom and locked the door. From the window, she could see the men circling the house. One of them pulled out a small device that blinked with a red light. They knew she was here. She scanned the room for anything useful, Her eyes landed on the fire escape ladder outside the window, a relic from when her mother had worried about storms or fires. She forced the window open, the cold air biting at her face, and swung the ladder down as quietly as she could. The baby's voice came again, urgent now. Hurry. Emma climbed down into the snow, her boots sinking deep. She kept to the shadows, moving behind the line of trees at the edge of the property. The voices of the men carried faintly through the wind. She can't have gone far, one said. Emma slipped deeper into the woods, the crunch of snow under her feet masked by the whisper of wind through the pines. Her breath came in sharp bursts, each one visible in the frigid air. After what felt like an eternity, she reached the road that led toward the harbor. She stopped, catching her breath, and glanced back. The house was just a dark shape in the distance, but she could still see the faint glow of flashlights inside. They're not going to stop, the voice in her head said. Emma gritted her teeth. Then neither will I. She turned toward the harbor lights and started walking, snow falling heavier around her. Somewhere out there was someone who could help her. But she knew time was already running out. The harbor smelled of salt and diesel, a sharp contrast to the sterile halls Emma had fled weeks ago. She pulled her hood lower, passing the dark outlines of fishing boats rocking gently against their moorings. The docks were quiet too early for most of the fishermen to be out, too cold for tourists. She found a bench near the end of the pier and sat, catching her breath. Her duffel rested at her feet. For a few moments, she just listened to the water lapping against the pilings. The baby's voice was silent now, but she could still feel the awareness there, like a watchful presence. Her mind kept circling back to the wooden box in her mother's kitchen. She didn't remember seeing it before. The pendant wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was something her mother had left for her, deliberately. Which meant her mother had known this day might come. Footsteps crunched on the pier behind her. She turned quickly, relief flickering when she recognized Caleb's tall frame emerging from the shadows. I thought you went home, Emma said. I did, he replied, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. Then I saw two black SUVs headed toward your place. Figured I should check if you were still breathing. They were Helix, she said, his brow furrowed. You're going to have to tell me what's really going on, Emma. I can't help you if I don't know. She hesitated, then nodded toward the duffel. Let's not talk here. Come on. They left the pier and made their way through the sleeping town to a small storage shed behind the shuttered bait shop. Inside, Caleb flicked on a single bulb, casting yellow light over shelves of dusty tackle boxes and rope coils. Emma sat on an overturned crate and told him everything: how she'd been recruited by Helix 3 years ago, drawn in by their promises of groundbreaking work in memory preservation technology, how the project had turned darker, pushing beyond ethics into human trials, how she'd discovered that her own mother had once been part of it, decades earlier. They call it generational memory transfer, she said, her voice low. They found a way to imprint one person's experiences onto the DNA of their child, not just instinct sexual memories. Caleb stared at her. That's insane. It's real, she said. I worked on the systems that store and encode the memories. They call it the memory core. Every subject is monitored from birth. Every thought, every sensation recorded and cataloged. My mother was part of the early trials. She disappeared before I was old enough to ask questions. Caleb's voice softened. And you think that's why they're after you now? Emma nodded. Because I'm pregnant. Because they've already done it to use my DNA. My memories. The baby ain't just mine. They see it as their property, their next generation. Caleb leaned back against the wall, exhaling sharply. Jesus, Emma, I can hear the baby, she admitted. Not just feel. Here, in my head. It knows things, warns me about things. Caleb didn't laugh or scoff. Instead, he studied her with a seriousness that unnerved her. If what you're saying is true, you need more than my badge to protect you. Emma thought of the pendant again, its cold weight in her palm. There's something else. My mother left me a necklace with a chip embedded in it. I don't know what's on it yet, but if she was working on the same project, it might be important. Caleb stepped forward. We can find out. I know someone lives out past the state line. He's a little paranoid, but if there's data on that chip, he can pull it. Before Emma could respond, the baby's voice flared in her mind, sharp and urgent. They're close. Her eyes darted to the shed's grimy window. Headlights were sweeping across the harbor road, two beams cutting through the dark. Caleb swore under his breath, "Come on." They slipped out the back door and into the narrow alley behind the bait shop. Snow crunched under their boots as they moved quickly, sticking to the shadows. The hum of engines grew louder. Caleb led her through a series of back streets, his familiarity with the town's layout saving precious seconds. They reached his SUV parked behind the post office. He unlocked it with a click and helped her inside. "Where are we going?" Emma asked as he started the engine. "North," he said. "If we can get to Miriam's place, we might have a shot." She used to work for Helix, walked away 20 years ago. Lives in an old convent near the New Hampshire border. If anyone knows what your mother was involved in, it's her. The tires spun slightly before gripping, and the SUV surged onto the icy road. Emma glanced behind them. The headlights were closer now, maybe 2 cars following. "Can we lose them?" she asked. Caleb's mouth set in a grim line. "We can try." The SUV roared up the hill leading out of town, the snowflakes slanting sideways under the beam of the headlights. Emma held onto the door handle, her pulse thudding in time with the baby's faint movements. "Mom," the voice whispered in her head. "Calmer now. Trust him." She glanced at Caleb. He didn't look at her, his eyes locked on the road ahead. But for the first time since she'd stepped off the bus, she felt a thread of something besides fear. It was fragile, but it was there, and she was going to hold onto it as long as she could. The road north wound through thick pine forests, the snow along the shoulders piled high from weeks of storms. Caleb's SUV hummed steadily, its headlights carving a narrow tunnel of light through the darkness. Emma sat with her hands pressed to her belly, feeling the baby shift as if aware of their movement. For nearly an hour, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was heavy with thought. Emma kept replaying the last time she'd seen her mother's face, a blurry memory from when she was 9. Her mother had kissed her forehead and told her she'd be back soon. She never returned. "How far to Miriam's?" Emma asked finally. "Another 30 miles. Caleb replied. "The comments on an old logging road most folks don't even know exists. She keeps it that way for a reason." The baby's voice, faint but clear, slipped into her mind. "She's safe." Emma turned her gaze to the snowy blur beyond the window. Safe wasn't a word she trusted anymore, but she wanted to believe it. By the time they turned off the main road, the wind had picked up, shaking the branches overhead. The SUV crunched over unplowed snow as they climbed a hill toward a cluster of dark shapes. A weathered wooden sign came into view, the paint so faded it was barely legible. St. Mary's Convent. The main building was a stone structure with a steep roof and narrow windows, its silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. A single light glowed in one of the lower windows. Caleb parked near the side entrance and killed the engine. "She doesn't take visitors," he said, "but she owes me a favor." They crunched through the snow to the door. Caleb knocked 3 times, waited, then knocked twice more. After a pause, the door opened a crack, revealing an older woman with sharp eyes and a lined face framed by graying hair. "Caleb," she said flatly, "you've brought trouble." "Good evening to you too." "Miriam," Caleb replied. "We need help." Her gaze shifted to Emma, lingering on the curve of her belly. Something flickered in her expression or caution. "Maybe." "Come in," she said finally, stepping aside. The warmth inside was immediate, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and something herbal. Miriam led them to a small sitting room lined with shelves of books and jars. She gestured for them to sit, then took a chair across from them. "You're Hayes's girl," Miriam said to Emma. "I can see it in your face." Emma's throat tightened. "You knew my mother." "Knew her, worked with her, and warned her to walk away before it was too late." Miriam leaned back, her gaze steady. She didn't listen. Helix was her life's work until she realized what it was becoming. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out the pendant. "She left me this." Miriam took it, turning it over in her fingers. This isn't just jewelry. There's a microchip embedded in Heriold tech, but secure. Probably holds encrypted data she didn't want Helix to have. She worked on the same project I did. Emma said, memory transfer. Only I think she might have been one of the first test subjects. She was, Miriam confirmed. Back then, it was theory. They believed they could encode human memories into genetic sequences and pass them down to the next generation. Your mother carried part of someone else's life in her blood, and now, so do you. Emma felt the baby move, a slow roll under her palm. They're after me because of the baby. They're after you because the baby is the most complete iteration of the project, Miriam said. Helix has been trying for decades to achieve perfect memory integration, no rejection, no degradation. If what I suspect is true, your child is the first to inherit without intervention. Caleb frowned. So, what's the play? Hide her until the baby's born. Miriam shook her head. That buys time, but not much. Helix has resources you can't outrun. If you want to end this, you have to go after the heart of the beast memory core. Emma's breath caught. I've seen it, or pieces of it, at Helix headquarters. It's not just storage it's control. They monitor and edit memories like files on a computer, and destroy them if they choose, Miriam said. Which means they can erase identities, rewrite histories. That's power no one should have. Before Emma could respond, the baby's voice came again, soft but urgent. They're here. A sharp rap at the door echoed through the stone hall. Miriam was on her feet instantly. Back room. Now! Caleb grabbed Emma's arm and guided her toward a narrow hallway. They slipped into a small storeroom filled with crates. Through a slit in the curtains, Emma saw the faint outline of headlights outside. Two figures approached the doorman in dark winter coats with the Helix emblem barely visible under the porch light. Miriam's voice carried from the front room. Can I help you? We're looking for a woman, one of the men said, his tone smooth but cold. Late 20s, pregnant. She's in danger, and we need to bring her in for her safety. I haven't seen anyone like that, Miriam replied. And you're not welcome here without a warrant. There was a pause. Then the man said, We'll be back. Their footsteps crunched away through the snow. Caleb exhaled slowly. That was too close. Emma looked down at the pendant in her hand. We can't just wait for them to find us again. Miriam rejoined them, her face grim. Then you'll need to move fast. There's someone in Chicago who can access the data on that chip. If it's what I think it is, it could bring Helix down. Emma closed her fingers around the pendant. Then we go to Chicago. By dawn, the wind had shifted, carrying with it the scent of heavier snow. Miriam stood at the back door of the convent, her coat collar turned up against the cold. If you're going to make it to Chicago without being intercepted, you'll need to move now, she said. Helix will have roadblocks up within hours. Caleb loaded Emma's duffel into the back of the SUV while she adjusted her gloves. The pendant hung beneath her sweater, warm from her skin. She kept her hand on her belly as if to shield the baby from the chill. Miriam stepped closer, lowering her voice. There's a safe route that avoids the major highways. It'll take longer, but you'll avoid most of their checkpoints. Follow the old timber road west for 20 miles until you hit Route 41. From there, you can head south into Massachusetts and cut across. Emma nodded, committing the directions to memory. The baby stirred faintly, as if acknowledging the plan. Before they could leave, Miriam pressed a folded piece of paper into Caleb's hand. Addresses and contact codes for Daniel Price. He's the only one I trust with that chip. Understood, Caleb said. They set off just as the first flakes of the new storm began to fall, drifting lazily through the gray morning light. The timber road was rough and narrow, hemmed in by snowbanks and towering pines. Emma watched the trees whip past, her thoughts tumbling over each other. An hour in, the storm thickened, the snow falling in blinding sheets. The wipers struggled to keep the windshield clear. Caleb's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. This is getting bad, he muttered. From the corner of her mind, the baby's voice came softly. Don't stop. Emma leaned forward. We have to keep moving. Caleb shot her a look, but didn't argue. The road began to climb into a series of low hills, the SUV laboring against the snowpack. Then, without warning, a black SUV appeared ahead, parked across the road. Two figures stood beside it, their dark coats stark against the white landscape. Caleb cursed under his breath. Roadblock. They found us, Emma said. He threw the gearshift into reverse and backed up quickly, tires slipping on the ice. The men moved toward them, one raising a hand to signal them to stop. Hang on, Caleb said, spinning the wheel sharply. The SUV fishtailed as he turned onto a narrow side trail barely wide enough for the vehicle. Branches scraped the sides as they plunged deeper into the forest. Emma clutched the door handle, the baby shifting uneasily within her. Snow lashed the windows, the world outside dissolving into a white blur. Behind them, an engine roared to life. They're following, Caleb said. The trail twisted sharply, forcing him to slow. In the side mirror, headlights bobbed through the trees. We won't outrun them on this road, Emma said. We don't have to, Caleb replied. We just have to make them lose sight of us. He veered suddenly down another path, barely visible under the snow. The SUV jolted over hidden roots and rocks, the shocks groaning. Caleb killed the headlights, plunging them into a dim, snowy twilight. They crept forward in near silence, the sound of the pursuing vehicle fading until there was nothing but the muffled hiss of snow on metal. After several tense minutes, Caleb eased back onto a wider track that eventually met a plowed county road. He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders loosening. Nice trick, Emma said. Learn it at hunting deer with my dad, he replied. Same idea to let your target know where you've gone. They pressed on, the storm worsening by the hour. By late afternoon, they crossed into Massachusetts, the roads now lined with skeletal trees heavy with snow. They stopped only once for gas, keeping their hoods up and heads down. That night, they pulled into a rundown motel off a state highway. The neon sign buzzed faintly above the office, casting a weak glow over the snow-covered lot. Inside their room, Emma peeled off her wet coat and sat on the edge of the bed. Her fingers found the pendant beneath her sweater. Mom, the baby's voice murmured, softer now. Be careful tomorrow. Emma closed her eyes. What's going to happen tomorrow? Silence. The presence retreated, leaving only the faint rhythm of the baby's heartbeat against her palm. Caleb emerged from the bathroom with a towel around his neck. Get some rest. We'll head out before sunrise. Chicago's still a long way, and I don't want to run into any more Helix teams. Emma nodded, though sleep felt like a distant possibility. She kept thinking of her mother, of the secrets locked inside the pendant, of Daniel Pricehover. He wasn't the role he might play in all this. Outside, the storm howled against the thin motel walls, as if trying to force its way in. The storm finally broke somewhere over Ohio, leaving behind a brittle blue sky and miles of snow-blanketed fields. The interstate shimmered in the pale sunlight, ice still clinging to the shoulders. Caleb kept the SUV moving at a steady pace, eyes scanning the rearview mirror more than the road ahead. By the time the Chicago skyline came into view, the sun was setting, streaking the glass towers in orange and pink. Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The city meant people, and people meant it was easier for Helix to hide in plain sight. Caleb followed a series of turns that took them away from downtown into an older industrial district. The roads here were lined with brickware houses, some boarded up, others converted into lofts or workshops. He stopped in front of an unmarked garage with a single security camera above the door. This is it, he said. Before Emma could ask how he knew, the garage door rumbled open. A man stepped out, tall and lean with a beanie pulled low over his brow. His eyes flicked over Caleb, then landed on Emma. You must be the one carrying the data, he said, voice calm but direct. Daniel Price, Caleb said by way of introduction. Daniel nodded once. Get inside. We don't have time for pleasantries. Inside, the garage was part workshop, part bunker. Computer towers lined one wall, their fans humming softly. A workbench cluttered with circuit boards and tools stood near a heavy steel door at the back. Daniel motioned toward a small table, the chip. Emma hesitated before pulling the pendant from around her neck and handing it over. He examined it briefly, then sat at the workbench and began dismantling the setting with practiced hands. The chip inside was no bigger than a grain of rice. "This is old Helix tech," he said. "Early generation, probably from the first phase of the program. The encryption will be heavy, but I can break it." Emma crossed her arms. "What's on it?" "That's what we're about to find out." Caleb paced near the steel door while Daniel connected the chip to a small reader and began typing rapidly. Lines of code scrolled across the nearest monitor. Minutes stretched. Emma tried to keep still, but her hands fidgeted in her lap. The baby shifted again, and she caught the faintest murmur in her mind. "This matters." Finally, Daniel leaned back. "Got it. There are memory sequences, hurry neural maps, full sensory data belonging to multiple subjects. One of them is your mother, Emma, and there's something else, a set of access codes for the primary memory core at Helix headquarters." Emma's breath caught. Access codes. Daniel nodded. "With these, you could shut the system down permanently or destroy it." Caleb stopped pacing. "That's the heart of the beast, isn't it?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Yes, but you'd have to get inside the facility. It's in the Rockies, buried under a Helix research campus that's built like a military base." Emma felt the baby move, stronger this time. "If that's what it takes to end this, I'll do it." Daniel studied her for a moment, then turned back to his computer. "You'll need a plan. The front entrance is impossible, biometric locks, security patrols, drones. But there's a drainage tunnel that runs from the mountain into the river below. It's old, predates the facility, but it connects to the lower levels." Caleb crossed his arms. "Sounds like a good way to freeze to death." "It's the only way you won't get spotted," Daniel said. Emma's voice was steady. "Then that's the way we'll go." Daniel turned to a cabinet and began pulling Garthermal clothing, climbing harnesses, waterproof packs. "I can get you most of what you need, but you'll have to move fast. Once Helix realizes you've got these codes, they'll tighten security even more." That night, they slept in a small loft above the workshop. Emma lay awake listening to the faint hum of servers below. Caleb slept in the corner chair, one hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. She turned on her side, hand over her belly. "Are you afraid?" she whispered in her mind. The baby's voice was soft but clear. "Not if you're with me." For the first time in days, Emma smiled. The next morning, Daniel had the map ready, a detailed schematic of the facility, the drainage tunnel, and the surrounding terrain. He spread it across the workbench, tracing their route with a gloved finger. "You'll have to approach from the north side. There's an old logging road here that leads down to the river. The tunnel entrance is about 20 feet above the water line. From there, you'll have to crawl through for about 100 yards before you hit the sublevels." "And then?" Caleb asked. Daniel's mouth tightened. "Then you'll be inside the most secure building Helix has ever built. You'll have to improvise from there." Emma studied the map. Every line, every symbol felt like a step toward the Indone way or another. They loaded the SUV before noon, supplies stowed in the back. Daniel handed Emma a small waterproof case. "This holds the decrypted chip and the access codes. Lose it, and the whole mission is dead." Emma took it, the weight far heavier than its size. "Thank you," she said. Daniel met her eyes. "If you succeed, Helix won't just be crippled, they'll be exposed. Every memory they've stolen, every life they've tampered with, it'll all come out." Caleb started the engine. The garage door opened to reveal a gray Chicago afternoon. Snow had begun to fall again. Emma looked once more at Daniel. "We'll finish this." "I hope so," he said quietly. "For all our sakes." The SUV rolled out into the street, the city swallowing them up once more. Ahead lay mountains, danger, and the heart of the enemy. But Emma felt the baby's quiet presence inside her, steady and certain. And for the first time since this began, she believed they might make it. The highway west stretched endlessly, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through frozen plains and low hills. By the third day of driving, the air grew thinner, the peaks of the Rockies rising like jagged teeth against the horizon. The weather was holding for now, but a storm was forecast to sweep through by nightfall. Caleb kept the SUV at a steady pace, eyes scanning both the road ahead and the mirrors behind them. They had switched plates twice since leaving Chicago, just in case Helix was tracking. Emma sat beside him, the waterproof case holding the decrypted chip strapped securely under her jacket. She could feel its outline pressing against her ribs. The baby stirred occasionally, offering short, wordless impressions, flashes of anticipation, warnings to stay alert. Once, just before they turned off the main highway, Emma heard it clearly. Almost there. By late afternoon, they reached the point where the old logging road branched away from the state route. It was barely more than a rutted track now, half covered with snow and ice. Caleb eased the SUV onto it, the tires crunching through the crusted surface. The road twisted downward through dense forest until they reached a narrow clearing by a fast-moving river. The air was colder here, and the sound of rushing water echoed between the cliffs. "That's it," Caleb said, pointing across to a shadow in the rock face. The tunnel entrance was small, half hidden by hanging ice and snow. They parked behind a stand of fir trees. Caleb killed the engine and got out to survey the river bank. "We'll have to cross on foot. Water's too deep to drive through." Emma pulled on the thermal gear Daniel had given her, then slung the waterproof pack over her shoulder. She followed Caleb down to the water's edge, where the current swirled black under a thin crust of ice. The crossing was brutal. The water reached their thighs, numbing instantly through the waterproof layers. Each step sent sharp pain shooting up Emma's legs. Caleb stayed ahead, breaking the ice when necessary, and held her arm when the current tried to pull her off balance. When they reached the other side, both were shivering. Caleb helped Emma scramble up the icy bank to the tunnel mouth. Up close, it looked even less inviting, a dark, narrow passage barely high enough to stand in, the air inside heavy with damp. Caleb switched on a headlamp and handed Emma a smaller flashlight. "Stay close. It's about 100 yards to the access shaft." The walls were slick with condensation, the floor uneven and partially frozen. Their boots crunched over gravel and ice as they moved deeper inside. Every sound, dripping water, shifting stones, seemed amplified in the confined space. Halfway in, Emma heard it, the faint hum of machinery somewhere ahead. Caleb must have heard it too, because he slowed, scanning the tunnel ceiling for vents or wires. "This means we're close to the sublevels," he said quietly. When the tunnel finally widened into a small chamber, they found the access shaft, a vertical metal tube with a maintenance ladder bolted inside. Faint light filtered down from above. Caleb checked his watch. "We're right on time. The storm should hit soon, which might cover any noise we make getting in." Emma tightened the straps on her pack and began to climb. The metal was cold enough to burn through her gloves, and she moved quickly to keep the blood flowing. By the time she reached the top, her breath was coming hard. The hatch above was locked with an electronic panel. Emma stepped aside so Caleb could work on it, using a small device Daniel had provided. It took less than a minute for the panel to click and the hatch to swing upward. They emerged into a dimly lit maintenance corridor. The air here was warmer, but smelled faintly of ozone and disinfectant. "This is sublevel 3, Caleb whispered. "From the schematics, the memory core is on sublevel 1, central chamber. We'll have to pass through at least to security checkpoints." They moved quickly but cautiously, keeping to the shadows whenever possible. Twice they ducked into side rooms to avoid the echo of approaching footsteps. The deeper they went, the more Emma felt a strange pull, like a thread tugging at her from inside. The baby's voice returned, clearer now. "We're close. I know the way." She touched Caleb's arm. "Left at the next junction," she whispered. He didn't ask how she knew. They turned left, passing through a service tunnel lined with pipes and cables. At the end was another locked door. Caleb swiped the stolen access card Daniel had encoded, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay a wide corridor lined with glass panels. Behind the panels were rooms filled with medical equipment, holographic displays, and suspended pods, each one holding a person in a deep, unmoving sleep. Emma's stomach turned. "Subjects," she murmured. "They're still running trials." Caleb's jaw tightened. "We can't help them right now. We stick to the plan." They reached a final security door. The panel here required both a card swipe and a code entry. Emma stepped forward, pulling the decrypted chip from its case. She slotted it into the panel's port. The screen flickered, then displayed a prompt. Without hesitation, she entered the access codes from memory. The lock disengaged. The door slid open to reveal a large, circular chamber bathed in cold blue light. In the center, suspended in a web of cables and support arms, was the memory sphere of shifting light and shadow, humming softly as if alive. Emma felt the baby's heartbeat match the rhythm of the core. Her pulse quickened. "This is it," Caleb said, and somewhere behind them, the echo of footsteps signaled they were no longer alone. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the curved metal walls of the chamber. Caleb instinctively moved in front of Emma, his hand hovering near the grip of his sidearm. From the far side of the room, a shadow resolved into the figure of a man in a dark-tailored suit, flanked by Helix security officers in body armor. Emma recognized him instantly. Jonathan Kinesio of Helix Dynamics. His presence radiated calm control, the kind that made people forget to breathe. "Emma Hayes," he said, his voice smooth, almost cordial. "I knew you'd come. Your mother would be proud." Emma tightened her grip on the waterproof case. Proud of what? That I'm standing in front of the machine she tried to destroy. Keen smiled faintly, as if indulging a child. She didn't understand the vision, but you might. The memory core, and just technology, its evolution. With it, we can preserve the entirety of human experience. No more loss, no more ignorance. Every newborn can start life with the wisdom of generations. Caleb stepped forward. Sounds more like control than wisdom. Keen's gaze flicked to him briefly before returning to Emma. Control is simply the means to ensure order. And you, Emma, are carrying the most important advancement in this project's history. Your child is proof the process works perfectly without degradation. Emma felt the baby shift, the presence in her mind tightening like a clenched fist. "You think I'd hand my child over to you? I think you care about the future," Keen said. "And you must realize what an extraordinary gift this is. With your cooperation, your child will live forever in a way no one else can." Without it, his voice softened, dangerous in its gentleness. "You risk losing everything." Caleb moved subtly to the side, angling toward one of the core's control consoles. Keen's guards noticed and raised their rifles slightly. Emma forced her voice to stay steady. "What exactly do you want from me?" "A link," Keen replied. "Your neural patterns, combined with your child's, integrated directly into the core, the final key to stabilizing generational transfer. You'd be part of something eternal." The baby's voice rang sharply in her mind. "Don't trust him." Emma met Keen's gaze. "And if I refuse?" His smile faded. "Then we take what we need. One way or another." Caleb's voice cut through the tension. "Emma," he gave the smallest nod toward the console, his hand already moving toward a data port. She understood instantly this was their chance to upload the virus Daniel had prepared. Emma took a slow step toward Keen, drawing his focus. "Tell me something, Jonathan. Do you ever think about what it's like to lose control?" He frowned slightly, sensing the shift in her tone. "Control is not something I lose. That's about to change." At that moment, Caleb slid the small drive into the console's port. A soft chime sounded, barely audible over the core's hum. Keen's eyes snapped toward him, but it was already till the virus was in. The memory core's light shifted from its steady blue to a chaotic swirl of colors. The hum deepened, resonating in the floor beneath their feet. Warning lights flared across the chamber walls. "What have you done?" Keen demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. Emma backed toward the console, placing herself between Caleb and the guards. "I'm giving people their lives back." The core's hum turned into a low, pulsing roar. Streams of data bled across the holographic displays, files unlocking and scattering into open networks. Emma recognized what she was seeing: names, dates, sensory maps of everything Helix had taken over decades flooding back into the world. Keen barked an order, and his guards advanced. Caleb fired a single warning shot into the floor, forcing them to halt. You won't get out alive, Keen said, regaining some of his calm. Even if you destroy this core, there are backups. Others will continue the work. Emma's voice was quiet but unyielding. Maybe, but you won't. The core's containment field began to destabilize, arcs of light lashing out like lightning. The heat in the room rose, the air thick with ozone. Caleb grabbed Emma's arm. Time to go. Keen shouted after them, his voice barely audible over the growing roar. This isn't the end. Emma didn't look back. She followed Caleb to the maintenance door, the vibrations underfoot making it hard to keep her balance. As they reached the ladder to the drainage tunnel, the baby's voice came again, calmer now. You did it. Halfway down, a shockwave rippled through the tunnel as the core's energy field collapsed. The lights above flickered, then died. They descended into near darkness, the only sound their breathing and the faint rush of water ahead. When they finally emerged into the cold night air by the river, snow was falling again. Behind them, deep within the mountain, a muted rumble marked the core's final moments. Caleb glanced back once, then turned to Emma. We're not safe yet. We need to get as far from here as possible before Helix regroups. Emma nodded, pulling her coat tighter. She could still feel the faint warmth of the core's presence in her mind, fading like the echo of a dream. Somewhere inside her, the baby whispered, "It's not over." Emma didn't disagree. Snow fell in thick curtains as Emma and Caleb pushed along the river bank, their boots crunching on the frozen ground. Behind them, faint flashes of light pulsed from deep within the mountain remnants of the core's destabilization. The sound was muffled by the storm, but the urgency in Caleb's pace made it clear he didn't think they were far enough away. They reached the SUV hidden among the trees, both of them soaked and shivering. Caleb tossed the pack into the back and slid into the driver's seat. Emma climbed in beside him, pulling the door shut against the wind. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they send drones into the valley, Caleb said, starting the engine. Emma didn't answer. Her hand rested on her belly, and the baby's voice echoed softly in her mind. We're not done yet. Caleb drove without headlights, following the narrow logging road that wound along the river. The snow muted the sound of the tires, but it also erased the trail behind them. For once, the storm was their ally. Half an hour later, they cleared the forest and merged onto an empty service road heading east. Emma exhaled for the first time since they left the core chamber. Do you think it worked? Caleb glanced at her. If Daniel's virus did what he said, the data should be out in the world by now. Emma's mind kept circling the image of those holographic files spilling open, scattering like leaves in the wind. It had felt final, but Keen's words still gnawed at her. There are backups. They drove through the night, stopping only once to refuel at an all-night station in a nearly deserted town. While Caleb pumped gas, Emma went inside to use the bathroom. On her way back, she passed a small television mounted above the counter, the screen tuned to a national news channel. Breaking story. The anchor was saying, an anonymous data dump late this evening has revealed extensive human experimentation tied to Helix dynamics, including genetic memory transfer and unauthorized human trials. The company has not yet issued a statement, but federal authorities have. Emma stopped in her tracks, the words sinking in. The screen showed documents, lab images, and photographs of the suspended subjects she had seen through the glass panels, public, irrevocable. Caleb came in, spotted her staring at the screen, and followed her gaze. His shoulders eased slightly. Looks like the world knows now. Emma wanted to feel relief. Instead, she felt something heavy responsibility. Every name, every face in those files was a person whose life had been rewritten or stolen. The truth was out, but that didn't undo the damage. They left the station and continued east until dawn. By then, the storm had eased, leaving the roads slick and glittering in the pale light. Caleb pulled off onto a side road and stopped beneath the cover of a rocky overhang. We need to decide our next move, he said. Helix is going to be in chaos, but that also makes them dangerous. If Keen got out, he'll regroup. Emma rubbed her temples. We can't go home. And we can't just keep running forever. Caleb leaned back, watching her. So, What are you thinking? She hesitated, then spoke slowly. Keen isn't wrong about one thing. Me child is proof the process works. As long as we're out here, they'll hunt us. If we disappear completely, we might have a chance to raise this baby free from all of it. And if we stay, Caleb asked, then we fight, she said. We use what's left of Helix's own network against them. There's no guarantee we'll survive, but maybe we can stop this for good. The baby's voice came then, not as a whisper, but as something clear and deliberate. You already chose, Mom. Emma closed her eyes, letting the words settle. Caleb broke the silence. If you want to vanish, I'll make it happen. I can get us to places where no one will look. But if you want to keep pushing, we'll need allies, and we'll need them fast. Emma opened her eyes. We go to Montana. There's someone there who can keep us off the grid until we decide. But I'm not promising we'll stay hidden forever. Caleb gave a short nod. Montana it is. They drove for hours, trading shifts at the wheel. By evening, the mountains had given way to open plains, the sky stretching wide and cold above them. Emma felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down, but also a strange steadiness. That night, they stopped at a small roadside inn with only two other cars in the lot. Emma stood outside for a while, looking up at the stars. The air was so clear she could see the faint smear of the Milky Way. The baby's voice broke the quiet. You're not alone. Emma smiled faintly. I know. Inside, Caleb was already asleep in the chair, his head tilted back. She lay down on the bed, one hand resting over her belly. For the first time since stepping off the bus in Rockford, she let her mind drift without the constant thrum of fear. Tomorrow they would cross into Montana. Tomorrow they would find a place to disappear to prepare for whatever came next. But tonight, they had survived, and that, for now, was enough. By the time they crossed the Montana state line, the sky had turned a pale winter blue, the air sharper and drier than in the mountains. The land opened up into rolling fields broken by clusters of bare cottonwoods, their branches black against the snow. Caleb drove with one hand on the wheel, scanning the empty highway with the habit of someone who knew quiet roads didn't always mean safety. Emma sat with the map unfolded across her lap. It's another 40 miles to the ranch, she said. Miriam's friend said it's completely off the grid. That's what we want, Caleb replied. If Helix is still tracking us, they'll have a hard time finding a signal out here. The baby stirred faintly, sending a ripple of warmth through her mind. Not all threats come from far away, it murmured. Emma's eyes flicked to Caleb, but she didn't say anything. They reached the turnoff to a narrow gravel road, almost invisible under the snow. The SUV crunched along for several miles until a weathered wooden gate came into view. Beyond it, the land sloped down to a low ranch house, smoke curling from the chimney. Caleb pulled up beside the gate and stepped out to unlatch it. A man in a heavy coat emerged from the porch, his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. You must be Emma, he called, his voice carrying easily in the cold air. Name's Henry Calloway. Miriam said you were coming. Emma climbed out, the crunch of her boots loud in the stillness. She said you could help us disappear. Henry gave a short nod. Get inside before you freeze. We'll talk there. The interior of the ranch house was warm and smelled faintly of cedar. A wood stove crackled in the corner. Henry gestured toward the kitchen table. You can stay here as long as you need. No one comes out this way unless they're lost or looking for trouble, and I know how to handle both. Emma sat, feeling the heat slowly seep into her bones. Caleb took the chair beside her, his posture still alert despite the calm surroundings. Henry poured coffee into 3 mismatched mugs. Miriam didn't give me details, and I don't need them. But I know enough to guess you've made enemies who won't forget you. They won't, Emma said. We've bought some time, but it's not over. Henry studied her for a moment, then shrugged. Time's all any of us can buy. For the first 2 days, life at the ranch settled into a quiet rhythm. Caleb helped Henry with chores, chopping wood and clearing snow. Emma spent her time in the small room Henry had given her, resting and trying to quiet her mind. But on the 3rd night, the quiet broke. Emma was woken by the sound of the baby's voice. urgent and clear. They're coming. She sat up, heart pounding. Outside, the wind was still, but she caught the faint glint of light through the window, a moving beam, too steady to be a reflection. She was already pulling on her boots when Caleb appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. "To vehicles coming up the road," he said. Henry joined them, his expression grim. "You didn't tell me you were followed." "We weren't," Caleb said. "They must have tracked us some other way." Headlights swept across the yard as the dark SUVs rolled to a stop. The sound of engines idling filled the night air. Doors opened, and several figures stepped out, dressed in heavy coats but moving with the precision of trained operatives. Henry handed Emma a small pack. "There's a back door that leads to the old barn. Go. I'll hold them off as long as I can." Emma hesitated. "Henry." "Go," he said firmly. Caleb led her through the narrow hallway to the back door. They slipped into the cold, their breath pluming in the air, and ran toward the shadowed bulk of the barn. Inside, the smell of hay and old wood surrounded them. Caleb pushed a ladder toward her. "There's a loft. Hide there until I signal." Emma climbed, the boards creaking under her weight. She crouched low among the hay bales, the baby pressing warm against her ribs. Below, Caleb moved silently toward the far wall, peering through a crack toward the house. The muffled sound of voices reached them low, tense. Then a single gunshot split the air. Emma flinched, gripping the edge of the loft. Seconds later, Caleb was climbing up beside her. "They're searching the house. Henry's down, but not dead. We have to move now." They dropped from the loft into the snow, keeping low as they circled around the barn. The SUVs were still in the yard, one with its headlights sweeping across the open field. Caleb led her toward the tree line, moving in quick bursts between shadows. When they reached the cover of the trees, Emma risked a glance back. A tall figure had stepped out of one of the SUVs, the porch light casting his face into sharp relief. "Jonathan Keene." Her stomach clenched. "He's alive." Caleb's hand tightened briefly on her arm. "Then we keep going." They pushed deeper into the trees, the snow muffling their steps. Behind them, voices shouted orders, and beams of light began to slice through the darkness. The baby's voice came again, steady this time. "It's not over, but we're close." Emma didn't know if that meant victory or the end of the road. All she knew was that Keene was still out there and he wasn't letting go. The forest seemed endless, every tree a dark sentinel in the moonlight. Snow fell in soft, silent drifts, masking their tracks but slowing their progress. Emma's breath came in sharp bursts, each one hanging briefly in the freezing air before vanishing. Caleb stayed a step ahead, his eyes scanning for movement, listening for the telltale crunch of pursuit. Behind them, voices still carried faintly through the trees. Keene's team was spreading out, using the SUV's headlights to sweep the open spaces. The forest gave them cover for now, but it wouldn't last forever. Caleb stopped suddenly and raised a hand. Through the trees, Emma could see the glint of Wateranero Creek winding through the snow. Its surface was partly frozen, but the current ran fast underneath. "We'll follow it downstream," Caleb said quietly. "The water will throw them off our trail." They moved into the creek bed, the icy water seeping into Emma's boots almost immediately. Each step was a test of balance, the rocks slick beneath the shallow current. The baby was silent now, but its presence in her mind was sharp and alert, as if it too was watching the darkness. After what felt like an hour, the creek widened and curved sharply. Ahead, through the trees, faint yellow light glowed. Caleb crouched low, motioning for Emma to do the same. They emerged onto the edge of a clearing where an old hunting cabin stood, its roof sagging under the weight of snow. A lantern burned inside, casting shadows on the frosted windows. Caleb studied it for a moment. "We can't stay here long, but it'll give us a place to rest and figure out our next move." Inside, the air was stale, but warmer than outside. A small fire smoldered in the stone hearth, and the scent of burning pine filled the room. Caleb moved to check the windows while Emma sank into the nearest chair, her legs trembling from fatigue. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, Keene was there. Not physically, but in her mind. his voice slipping in like cold water under a door. You can't run from me, Emma. She clenched her fists. Get out of my head. You opened the core, Keen said, his tone almost conversational. You linked yourself to it when you activated the codes. That connection goes both ways. I can find you, no matter where you hide. Emma's pulse quickened. Then why aren't you here already? Because I want you to hear this first. Your child's memory as pure sequencer still intact. Helix can rebuild everything from that. All I need is your cooperation. I'll even let you raise the child, but you'll be part of the work. She shut her eyes, blocking out the flicker of the fire. And if I refuse, then I'll take the child without you. The baby's voice surged up, cutting across Keen's. Don't believe him. You hold the key, not him. Emma's breath came ragged now, her hands pressed to her temples. Caleb was suddenly there, crouched in front of her. Emma, talk to me. She opened her eyes. He's in my head. He can track us because of the core link. Caleb's jaw tightened. Then we break it. From his pack, he pulled a small divisione of Daniel's last-minute additions. EMP pulse, short range, enough to fry anything with unshielded circuits. If that link is riding on neural tech, this might kill it. Emma stared at the device. And if it doesn't, then we'll still make it harder for him to find us, Caleb said. The baby's voice was calm now. Do it? Emma nodded. Do it? Caleb activated the device. A low hum filled the cabin, followed by a sharp pop that made the lantern flicker. Emma felt it immediately, a sudden lightness in her mind, as if a weight had been cut loose. The cold thread of Keen's presence was gone. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then Caleb spoke. We need to move before they realize they've lost the signal. They left the cabin the way they'd come, slipping back into the cover of the trees. The snow was heavier now, erasing their tracks almost as soon as they were made. Hours later, as dawn began to gray the horizon, they reached the edge of the forest. Below, a narrow valley stretched out, dotted with small barns and fence lines. Caleb pointed toward the far ridge. Henry told me there's an old freight line on the other side. If we can get to it, we can ride it east, out of Montana. Emma looked back at the forest, half expecting to see figures moving through the trees. There was nothing, just snow and silence. The baby's voice returned, softer than before. You bought us time, but he's not gone forever. Emma placed a hand on her belly. Then we'll be ready next time. They started toward the ridge, the snow crunching under their boots. Above them, the sun began to break through the clouds, turning the snowfield into a sheet of gold. For the first time in weeks, Emma let herself believe in something beyond survival. She didn't know where the freight line would take them, or how long their luck would hold. But as long as she could keep moving, keep choosing, Helix wouldn't win, not while she was still standing.